Express tonight a conversation about the fourth estate of the realm, because as we continue to do a post-mortem of the just ended presidential and parliamentary elections, there is a lot of conversations about the media. Election 2020 and the media, the good, the bad, and the completely ridiculous. So the postmortem is on, and there's been lots of talks about the media. How did they do their job? Because you know, the media, as well as we're all aware, are essential to democracy. And a democratic election is impossible without the media, actually. And we all know this fact. So how did the media perform during the elections? It is estimated that over 350 commercial radio stations and more than 30 television stations are currently operational in Ghana, in addition to international media houses who broadcast through satellites and digital subscriptions. And also, there are around 135 newspapers published in Ghana, including 16 independent newspapers and 9 daily newspapers. So there's been some media assessments, like I said from the beginning. After this elections, people have been assessing the media, and the political parties, the international observers have been assessing the media since the declaration of election results. What have they been saying? The NPP has been singing praises for the media, whilst the NDC chastises some media houses for what they term bias on towards certain political parties. The European Union Election Observer Mission, in their report, stated that some media houses provided equitable electoral coverage to the two main political parties, i.e. NPP and NDC, during the December 7 general elections, while others were biased in their coverage. Is this true? We'll be finding out. This is the breakdown of the EU Observer Mission's report. It talked about state-owned media and talked about private media. Let's see. It mentioned Daily Graphic, for instance, to allocate 29.9% space to the governing NPP and 26.5% to the opposition NDC during the electoral coverage. It also mentions Unique FM also, and which it says allocated 34.2% of its airtime to NPP and 28.6% for the NDC. And then it comes back to say the Daily Graphic and the Unique FM devoted additional coverage of government inaugurations and projects to the incumbent NPP. The Observer Mission continues to say it's found that state-owned GTV favored the NPP by allocating its 26.2% of airtime and its election-related news and programs compared to the 15.8% allocated to the NDC. And this is coming from the EU Observer Mission. Let's see what it has for the private media. And it mentioned some names. Among the private media analyzed by the EU Observer Mission were Adom FM, Joy FM, which it found to have favored the NDC in the election-related coverage, while UTV and private newspapers, The Chronicle and Daily Guide, showed biased coverage in favor of the NPP media, Now, let's look at media assaults. And as usual, you saw some members of the media being assaulted, one shot, another arrested for allegedly insulting the president, and others receiving treatment from various degrees of injuries. The GJA has condemned the shooting incident and attacks on the two journalists at the Ablekuma Central Collation Center. And the GJA president, Athol Moni, has described the incident as a stain on the country's democracy. Let's look at some notable events, and this is what I describe as the ugly. An Accra-based TV station, rushed in its projection of the parliamentary election results, but got it all wrong. Let's see what another Accra-based radio station did. It's alleged that the EC's declaration of presidential results were pre-recorded because the EC chair greeted "Good afternoon." And these are some of the issues we're interrogating. Tonight, we're looking at the good, the bad, the completely ridiculous, and also learn some lessons. Tonight, I'm being joined by Suleiman Abrahima, who is Executive Director for Media Foundation for West Africa. Samson Ladi Anyanini is a lawyer, host of Newsfile, and he's also the 2019 Journalist of the Year. And Andrew Danso Aninkra is president of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. I'm grateful that all of you joined me. Let me start with you, Sulemana Brahima. The Media Foundation for West Africa were very instrumental in monitoring the 2020 elections, right from voter registration, the campaign period, till the day of elections and aftermath. Likewise, many media houses in Ghana spending time, resources, expertise covering the elections. Your general impression about the performance and conduct of the media during the coverage of the 2020 elections?
Thank you for having me. We do have generally a very vibrant media environment, currently with over 428 radio stations, about 102 television channels, and as we do know, dozens of newspapers and other publications, as well as several other news websites. So our environment is one that is characterized by multiplicity of media organizations, diversity of ownership, difference in typology, and so on. And I think that ordinarily, this is the kind of media environment that you would say is required for every democracy to thrive. In our situation, the downsides of it would be factors such as, when it comes to ownership, who are the owners of the media? And indeed, over the years, that has been one of the most challenging things, because the regulators over the years have chosen to make available frequencies to persons who are aligned to the two main political parties. So if NDC is in power, a lot of the channels will go to the NDC folks. If the MPP is in power, a lot of the channels go to MPP folks. Indeed, over the last 1.5 to 2 years, close to 150 new radio frequency authorizations have been granted by the NCA. And as we do know, the NCA certainly is not an independent entity in the scheme of things. So generally, I think there were a number of media organizations that were doing as expected of them in terms of trying to cover the elections as independently as possible. And there are others who were basically using their platforms for political propaganda just to favor the political parties that their owners are aligned to. And this is something that cuts across the country, whether from Accra. I mean, you can name radio stations in Accra, in Kumasi, in Tamale, in Bolgatanga, including some in various districts. So for me, it is not surprising that we do have political actors, taking different sides in terms of the conduct of the media. Some saying, well, it was okay. Others saying the media have been biased. Some going to the extent of saying that the political parties have literally bought out some media organizations. And unfortunately, on elections day, as you do know, a number of incidents happened, including the one that happened in Ablekuma Central, that I have said, well, I don't have any sense or evidence to say that it was a targeted attack against the colleague who suffered injury. And by that, I mean the persons who committed that heinous crime. There is no evidence at this stage to say that they shot at these people because they were journalists. But of course, investigations is what will lead us to establishing whether or not it was a targeted thing. I think we need to commend the GJA for the swift intervention in terms of condemning the action and demanding investigations into that matter. Apart from that, post-election, we had the situation where some media houses were doing wrong projections, and indeed projecting at a time that one would wonder what would be the basis for them to do that. And I think that was as a result of what I would call the obnoxious sense of competition, where everybody or every media house is trying to race to become the first to break the news, or to be the first to be applauded for making projections ahead of everyone else. And in the process, some got it terribly wrong. And I don't need to name names. Apart from that, There are others who, naturally one would expect, knowing who they are, to basically be using it to propagate the agenda of their political parties. And so we've had cause to issue a number of statements prior to the elections and after the elections. One, urging the NCA not to assume wrongfully the power of deciding what the media must do, indirectly trying to intimidate the media. Post-election, we've had cause to issue a statement advising or urging the media to be circumspect in what they allow on their platforms at these critical times when we are in a tensed moment. So these will be my initial sentiments. Overall, I think that the media have contributed. Yes, they've been downsized, but generally, I think we would have suffered without the media than whatever excesses the media may have committed at this stage.
Let's get to the specifics, and I want to bring in Samson Ladanyan here because right after the declaration of results, we've had divergent opinions and views as to how we covered the elections. You were part of the elections, and now the political parties, the observer missions, even from individuals. The EU Observer Mission, for instance, tagged some media houses to be biased towards the incumbent MPP, whilst others were tilted towards the opposition NDC. What's your own estimation, whether media bias or not? Samson, I think you need to unmute for me.
Start directly with the EU Observer Mission. I think that they needed to have consulted properly. I believe that they didn't have people who understand the terrain here in Ghana to make some of the observations that they made. Some of them were outright wrong. They simply got it absolutely wrong on some of the observations they made, including trying to project that a media house like the Multimedia, as in the election headquarters or Joy, would have done something in favor of the opposition party. It tells me that they came in late into the process and didn't take time to study what was going on, and didn't get some locals to inform them as to what things were going on. So on that score, I would want to completely discard what they had to say, because it clearly has no basis, absolutely no basis for that kind of observation that they made. But I do not have doubts about their integrity in respect of the observations that they make about on election day and the activities that occurred. We were on the battlefront, if you like, and executed our job to the best of our abilities. I have been with the election headquarters on Multimedia covering 5 separate elections, and I am clear beyond the shadow of a doubt. There is no scintilla of a doubt in my mind that the election headquarters, for example, can never be compromised by any party whatsoever. So, like, Suleimana said, clearly there are stations that are set up to project the activities of either the NDC or the NPP, and they are known. We know them. Oman FM, Net2 TV, owned by Kenneth Japan. That's nothing but political propaganda. On the other side, until Radio Gold, suffered what they have suffered, that's what they were doing for the NDC. We know a number of media entities that have come up now and replacing Radio Gold in playing the role that Radio Gold was playing for the NDC. So there is Power, and there's one other television station, is it Waze or something? Clearly, let's call a spade a spade. That's what they are set up to do. And I think that they are unapologetic about what they are doing. and there's nothing to shy about as far as they know exactly what they are doing. They are set up as propaganda tools. But if you take the mainline media, like the multimedia, entity, if you take the TV3s, if you take the cities, of course, clearly, there are people who are doing their independent jobs. And for anybody who buys any faulty propaganda, that, for example, the election headquarters, was compromised by the NPP, you don't know what you're talking about, because you're talking about an organization that is using or relying on personnel in excess of the 200-300s, 400s or so, who are doing a particular job, and you sit in your home and think that all these people are NPP or NDC, or that all these people can be bought and can be paid by a particular entity to do what. So I'll say that generally the media did a very good job, particularly if you look from where I sit from election headquarters. All we did was to rely on Electoral Commission provisional figures and certified figures.
Definitely.
So if you're using certified results of the Electoral Commission, you cannot say that I have done anything wrong. Of course, there was one incident where the election headquarters made a typo error, if you like it, and swapped the result of one person for the other in the Bulsa, I think north or south thereabouts.
Bulsa
and that
north.
was immediately detected and corrected. So that was very genuine. So apart from that, I think you are part of the election headquarters, and how I saw you around the place, how you were all tired, clearly losing sleep, and not even bothering about going to, as it were, shower, change, and all of these things around the place. So it's been a good job so far. Of course, the excesses too were recorded, and maybe in good time during this discussion we can talk about the excesses. But I believe that the good work was more than the excesses that was recorded.
Definitely, and that's the critical role that the media is expected to play at all time as the fourth estate of the realm. Let me bring in Andrew Danso here. What's your own appreciation of the media's work? Do you think the media were biased?
Okay, thank you, Maisha. For once, and probably for the first time, I would say that we had an excellent time this time reporting on elections in Ghana. There was a lot of preparation that went into what was reported. Where I operate, especially, I could see that we made the effort in drafting in a lot of, let me say, being student journalists, others from other places, people who were interested in reporting, were given the opportunity to be trained. We had documents, we had papers that were circulated, we had information. Especially, let me recommend the Media Foundation for West Africa. We must also recommend the Ghana Police Service, especially because towards this time, we had the police media relation training, how police were to handle journalists and how journalists were to approach policemen on such occasions. We also had UNESCO, we had the Peace Council come in. We had a series of seminars to educate ourselves and to prepare us for this particular election that we had. Again, we were all aware of the fact that there was danger ahead, and so we took precautions, we cladded ourselves properly, We marked ourselves. The media institutions were told what to do. Vehicles were properly marked. Everybody went out there prepared to do some work. There were very little incidents of police, journalists, altercations and interaction to that extent where journalists would get hurt. Journalists would come in the wrong way to find themselves having to battle with police and, the military and the security forces. Yes, a few cases where there were gunshots. We are not able to tell who exactly, where it came from, who the people are. We heard of situations where some people, probably that is what we are hearing now, but we would leave that to investigation and the outcome of the investigation, whoever they were. I think all said and done, this year, the media, or for that matter, practitioners in the media were well prepared, and we went out there and we did what I would call an excellent job. There is room for improvement, definitely, but we believe as we go on, as we learn the lessons and we are able to put things together, that would inform us where to go, how to approach this kind of operations into the future. We have come a long way. The media has come a long way. And if you ask me to look at what we did and to pass judgment, I would say that we did quite an excellent job. We will have to tie the knots again and get things working. Come 4 years, we're sure that we'll be able to go out there and do a better job than we've done this time.
Let's talk about media responsibility, because going into this election, one event that caught the attention of many was the spread of fake news, and many of us, including the Multimedia Group, Media Foundation for West Africa, NMC, and even more, were all against this phenomenon, but that did not stop the spread of fake news. As media people, and Suleiman Ibrahim, I want you to handle this for me. Are you as appalled as the public on this matter?
Well, I think we are at a time when we have to come to terms with the fact that the phenomenon of whether we call it fake news, misinformation, or disinformation has come to stay with us. There are misinformation or disinformation entrepreneurs who would continue to perpetrate these acts so long as they know that some people would continue to fall for their acts. And as we speak, we continue to have a number of such content put out on a daily basis. The most recent one is a supposed tweet that is put out, under the pretext of it being issued or it being sent out by President Donald Trump of the US, in which, and of course they do it quite smartly. So you would see President Trump's Twitter account, the real Donald Trump. You would find likes and retweets and comments to it, and it says, congratulations to President Akufo-Addo of Ghana. I hope that the people of the United States will learn from what has happened in Ghana so that they will give hardworking presidents like me, and I'm talking about what the tweet says, hardworking presidents like me a second term, just as the people of Ghana have done. And a lot of people, including people that you wouldn't expect that they would fall for these things, would see these things and actually pass it on either through retweets or WhatsApp messages and so on and so forth. We've seen photographs that have been shared purported to be incidents happening in some polling stations. And once they are verified, you realize that these are either photographs or videos that happened years back in Ghana, and even in some cases, images that are from other countries. We've seen, for example, a video showing a military officer brutalizing some local citizens. And apparently, this is something that happened in the recently or ongoing crisis in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. And quite often, sometimes you may even see it as something that has been passed on to you. And then you'd ask why are you sharing this? And the people who are sharing it sometimes believe that it is true. I think that is why it is gratifying that we have a number of organizations that are taking up this whole concept of media literacy. Because as I said from the beginning, the phenomenon of fake news would continue to be with us. Studies are continuously being done. Digital platforms, the big ones, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, owned by Facebook, they continue to take a number of steps. But so far, I don't think they've been able to find a solution to this phenomenon that a lot of people are also using to either drive traffic to their websites, drive traffic to their personal accounts in order to be able to make a lot of money through advertising and so on and so forth. Because for advertisers, it's about the traffic to your website. It's not about, essentially who is sharing or who is visiting. It's about how many page views you have, how many unique page views, and so on and so forth. So it's a very worrying phenomenon, and I think that it is going to continue. As I said, the way to go is to continue to improve the capacity of fact-checking organizations to be able to respond as quickly and swiftly as possible when these content, images, or videos are, put out there. And then also it's important to let people know that you shouldn't just believe everything you see online or you hear by way of video, whether it's online or even offline. It's important to subject it to certain principles of, verification, so that, innocent people within some time get themselves involved in troubles or share false information, which, as I know, is a criminal thing to do here in Ghana. So I think the good thing is to remind ourselves that this is something that has come to stay. We need to take steps to deal with it. The digital platforms are doing what they can. I know, for example, ahead of the elections in Ghana, apart from the verified political party accounts, individuals couldn't, for example, advertise certain content in relation to the two main political parties or their candidates on Facebook or on Twitter. So that was a step that had been taken by these organizations. I know, for example, Facebook collaborated with a number of fact-checking organizations to be able to respond quickly to things that were put on their platforms, including the opportunity to alert, Facebook that we think this content could be false and therefore take action against it. But it's still not a solution to the phenomenon. And as I said, it's the fact-checking that has to be improved, media literacy has to be improved, and people need to constantly know that whatever they find online, they have to subject it to some sort of verification.
It is indeed worrying, and especially when this has been referred to only social media, but also seeing some of the traditional media committing some of these mistakes. And example we gave earlier about a respected station that was in a rush to predict and got everything wrong. And also others who were making allegations about Electoral Commission recording declaration and all of that. And you ask yourself, what does this kind of journalism mean to the strides we've made over the years to develop the media? But again, as usual, the media had their fair share of the beatings. It's usually the beatings that we get, but not the goodies. But well, that's where our passion has taken us. But on a more serious note, some journalists sustaining gunshots, some beating, some arrested in line of duty is certainly in bad taste. A very, very sad spectacle, if you ask me, something. Before we went into this elections, you had warned journalists not to allow themselves to be intimidated. And of course, the issue of uniformed men wanting to have things done their way and what have you. You've seen this again. This is not the first time. How do you feel?
This is where I expect, so far I haven't heard any of the political parties, the major political parties, say they have held a meeting and considered these things as so serious, issued statements to condemn them. I have not heard that the government has taken any formal step to sort of, at least begin with a statement on some of these things. Look, as many as 6 people we understand died in this election. 6 lives have been lost. And as far as, the major players as in the political parties are concerned, it looks like, business as usual. And you don't find them doing things or giving indications or making the necessary statements, to get things, to bring these things to the fore. And that's rather disturbing. Look, and I can only speak about, the election headquarters. When an entity makes such a huge investment and the election coverage at the election headquarters is a lot of money, planning, strategy, and so on. When such investment is made, EC officers are, sought after to come and give training to the journalists, and various other experts are brought in to give training. The journalists are brought from all over the country for meetings in Accra to train them to do the job and do it well. The least of the expectations of the employers or even the journalists themselves is to have these encounters, and especially when the encounters are had with security officers. That's the very most disturbing part of it. I need to be sure about the number of attacks that are a result of the security, officers during the elections. Otherwise, look, what we have seen is bad. It's terrible. Yes, on election day, things went on smoothly, but these things must also be brought to the fore. And the saddest part of it is that for as long as a perpetrator of these crimes belongs to the party in government, they are hardly punished. And that encourages the impunity. During the registration, we knew that was a dress rehearsal for what was to happen. A minister, a member of parliament, pulled a gun, shot in the crowd. Hawa Koomson admitted publicly that she had done that. Can you see how the police is treating her with kid gloves? Can you see them deal with her seriously as the IGP is talking about town that will crash you, will crash you? Crash who? There are people who have committed infractions that you have them. You haven't crashed them and you are threatening others. You think somebody is listening? Nobody takes you serious. And that's the saddest part of the situation. Look at these journalists who has been picked up by the police, and just this evening we understand has been granted bail.
Yeah.
Look at his situation and compare it to somebody who committed such a very serious, dangerous crime and confessed to it. They picked up this guy. They invited him, he attended to the police. And what did they do? They decided to keep him until the 48th hour to grant him bail. You know what that tells me? That was clearly deliberate to use bail as punishment, to put the guy behind in custody so that the guy will, as it were, like they say, for shaggy reasons, to make the guy feel the pain of being in custody, in police custody. And we know where they put you is not a good place anybody wants to stay. The law says you don't use bail as a punishment. That is what our law says, that bail shall not be used as a punishment. But look at what the police have just done. they use bail as a punishment. Deliberately punish the guy, put him behind, and, you know, in the process, seek to get him to apprehend fear, so that when he goes back to sit behind the microphone, you know, he will sort of feel that I may be picked up by the police, and even though I have a right and I am entitled to bail when they accuse me of any crime, I may still spend 2 days in police custody. What have we not heard about what a party chairman and a DCE have done to a police officer? Ask yourself what happened to that DCE and that party chairman. The police say they invited him and asked him to bring the men who stormed the police station and beat the police officer. They harmed that police officer. They invited him to come. They didn't go arrest him. They invited him to come. It took about 3 days. He still was not showing up. And they were still treating him. You know, I don't know. And the police is doing these things and expect people to listen to them and take them seriously. That is what I say, you know, are some of the things that you could clearly see that gives room for the people who are perpetrating this violence to be emboldened and to act with impunity. For as long as we are not dealing with those who are committing infractions and making them, you know, feel that they will be punished appropriately in accordance with the law, the impunity will continue. But you see, when you say somebody has, you know, insulted the president, when number one, we know insulting the president is not an offense, but I will be the very last to say that, or the very first to say that it is okay to insult the president. I think it's very terrible that even though it is not a crime, I don't see why anybody should be doing it. Now, the political party leaders who should be setting examples. Look at the press conference that John Boadu held yesterday. Look at the words he used against President Mahama. So he expects his followers to do what? To do differently? They will do the same. And he expects the opposite side to do what? To keep quiet? They would also, you know, be on the trajectory of using unspeakable words on the president.
And this is where the media becomes, no, we are caught at the crossroads, because these major political parties are acting irresponsibly. We, the media, we need to be responsible. Where do we draw the lines? Where do we draw the curtains and say, listen, we don't tolerate intemperate language. We need to cut you off so we don't also offend anybody. I'll take a break on PM Express. When I return from that break, we will delve into this matter. Welcome back to PM Express. We're discussing the media and assessing the work during the 2020 elections. We're looking at the lows, the highs, and the lessons for future elections. Samson Lade is a host of Newsfile. He's a lawyer and journalist of the year 2019. Andrew Danso is the president of the Independent Broadcasters Association, and Suleiman Ibrahima is executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. If I went on that break, we're talking about media attacks. And Mr. Danso, I remember all the cautions and advice prior to the elections from experts on how journalists should stay safe. And Samson was one of the people who was advising us. Yet I agree that there are circumstances that we couldn't have averted. Could we have averted these attacks? Mr. Danso, kindly unmute for me.
Sorry for that. So looking at how far we have come, looking at the records for this year, I believe we have been able to do something we have not done previously. When you look at the relation, we have the awareness that was created for the security agencies, how to relate to the security agencies, how to conduct ourselves. Some of these attacks, sometimes you cannot preempt, you cannot tell. When we talk about the physical attacks, i.e. The gunshots, you will not be able to tell when there is going to be a shooting. Of course, as a journalist, you would want to be there to pick the information. You want to be there when it is happening. You want to be there when, in some cases, I'm not sure there was even chaos, but then suddenly you would get somebody pull out a gun, and for what reason or the motivation, the person would want to fire warning shots and might not even be trained how to handle the gun. You would call them probably accident until proving otherwise for the time being. But otherwise, when you look at the way we carried ourselves during this election, I'm sure the training went down well, the information went down well. Yes, one is unfortunate, but then you would say that the number wasn't that high. Again, apart from the shooting incident, you will not find during the day, especially, that media men were attacked. In a few cases, yes, some had to run for their lives because after the gunshots, and some fell. Of course, there were stone throwing and other things. But then when you consider it, we would say it is minimal. Rather, the issue of verbal attack is what we could look at. Probably going forward, it is not just about talking to journalists where, when you talk about safety, what we have to do to be safe. But probably we also have to mount this campaign for the political activists, not just the parties, but people who are into politics, for them also to be trained and to be taught what the whole issue is about. Number one, concerning matters pertaining to security. Number two, the fact that there will be journalists out there doing their work. They are mandated to do their work. These are not criminals. These are not people who are unwanted. These are not mentioned, whatever name, whatever terminology. These are members of society who are mandated to carry out their duty and their responsibilities. I have said in some places that as often as you think you have the right to exist, to express yourself, somebody has the same right to exist, to express him or herself. We are all guided and guarded by the Constitution to exist and to operate. You think you have a right to your party activity. Somebody also believes that he has a right to his profession. And therefore, when we understand what we do in these times, we are able to keep within certain limits and we do not go beyond bounds. Within the framework of protecting journalists and making sure that we are safe in practicing what we train to do or what we go out there to do, I believe it is time also that we look at the media organizations that have taken upon themselves to ensure the safety of journalists, be it the governmental side. And when I say the governmental side, probably I'm talking about the National Coordinating Committee on Safety of Responsible Journalism. Maybe this is a time that we have to take up the discussion and to look at how far what has been done, what has gone into it, probably making available some kind of resources for training of political parties, their activists, their agents, making them aware of what goes on the day of election, how they have to treat other people. Because the point is, election is not just about political parties. There are other players, there are other key players, journalists, security men, even the electoral officers, transport owners, those people, everybody who contributes to the success of every election that we've had in this country. The political parties will have to be made aware of them. and to note that they are not the only people who matter on that day, and therefore they should be given the leeway to do whatever they want to do on that day. I believe strongly when we have made this aware to the political parties, we'll begin to see these incidents coming down and, better relationship going into future elections.
And on verbal attacks, there were instances where the media was found at crossroads when, for instance, the political parties were throwing jabs, intemperate language, behavior at each other. How do you recommend, Mr. Suleiman Ibrahima, that the media handles this going forward?
Well, Aisha, the reality is that we are in a situation where, for some people, their claim to fame is how much they have been able to insult, or they were able to insult their opponents during the campaign periods. Unfortunately, some people have used that as just their record to be able to secure government appointments. And within this government and in the previous government, people that we cited as being very abusive, using very toxic language, ended up securing appointments. And the only contribution one can say they made is how much they were able to abuse their opponents. There are media organizations here in Accra, Oman FM, Power FM, Ash FM in Kumasi, Tyne in the Tyne district, and a few others that will tell you, look, we know about the ethics that you talk about. We know about the professionalism that you talk about. But what we exist to do is to crusade for our party to come to power or to stay in power. And if that means that we are brutal on our opponents, we use whatever kind of language, that's what we're going to do. So throughout this campaign period and into the elections, we have been monitoring abusive language on radio. We continuously cited people, Kennedy Agyapong, Kwabena Kwache, Gordon Asare-Bediako, Mugabe Mase, Oheneba Bene, the guy who has been arrested. And I am sad that he's been arrested. And my sadness is beyond the fact that, as Samson was saying, he was detained for almost 48 hours. I think that these kinds of actions sometimes just make people heroes for nothing. For we have gotten to the point where, look, this guy was abusing me every day, and there are audios that, we play in the office, we laugh at it, and so on and so forth. For some of us, these are political clowns who don't deserve the action that the police have taken against him, regrettable as it is. I don't think that he deserves this kind of state attention that he's been given. But that is the situation we find ourselves in. In Ashanti region 2016, we visited Ash FM. We were told that, look, it's owned by Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, and our interest is making sure that our party comes to power. It is not about the ethics you talk about and so on and so forth. We did the league table of insults, and people like Mugabe will sit on radio and say, oh, at first they said I was number one. They said they are about 3. Because Wood to me and Kennedy Agyapong has taken over, and so on and so forth. They feel, to some extent, you feel that they feel proud that they've been cited, and their parties would praise them for doing the kinds of things that they do. I think that is where the NMC has not been up to the task in terms of the constitutional mandate to ensure that there is the highest standards of journalism practiced in the country. And going forward, I think that is one institution that we all have to pay attention to ensure that they live up to the constitutional obligations imposed on them.
And earlier, Samson, you made the point that in as much as we pat ourselves at the back because we've done extremely well, there were excesses. What are the lessons going forward, and what should be the watchword?
Well, as you asked earlier, what should we do? When should the media draw the line and say you can't cross this line? An informed media is what it is. Very well informed. Going into the elections, how many of us study the laws regarding the elections? How many of us studied the rules regarding the elections so that we don't do he says, a kind of reportage? They say, and we know they are peddling wrong. They are wrong. We tell them you are wrong. Okay? I think you and I, or is it Gifty rather, we had that discussion that somebody was saying they were asking for recount at the collation center. You don't ask for recount at the collation center.
You do it at the polling station.
The law says you ask for it at the polling station, and then a second recount can be done for you at the polling station. But if it is not done, the polling presiding officer will report to this other person, the one in charge of the constituency, and then they will do so for you when you get to the collation center. Now, what are we seeing presently? The media has a very important role to play. The NDC has a right to reject the results. They have a constitutional right to resort to demonstrations, but let's not allow our platforms to be used to propagate the idea that at this stage, the Electoral Commission can do anything to change the results.
And definitely that is what we must do, because we become a neutral, we have to attain a neutral ground when we're dealing with these two major political parties. I'm grateful that all of you were able to join us. These are lessons
by a court. The people are entitled.
And for the sake of time, and Samson, that's all time will allow us. Suleiman Ibrahim, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Samson Ladianyanene, lawyer, host of Newsfile and Journalist of the Year 2019. Andrew Dansan Nkra is President of Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. I'm grateful for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening.